Hello and welcome to the Bedroom Studios podcast, the podcast where we talk about what goes on behind the scenes in a musician's world and bridge the industry gap by bringing their stories, expertise, and advice to early career artists. Subscribe to join us for a fun chat about life as a creative person, tips and tricks for pursuing an artistic career, navigating the music industry, and more. I am your host, Emma, and today I will be interviewing Kaitlyn Aquino. Kaitlyn Aquino is a passionate neurologic music therapist with a Master of Music in Applied Music and Health Sciences from the University of Toronto under the supervision of Dr. Corene Thaut, co-founder of Neurologic Music Therapy. Kaitlyn is the founder of Rhythmic Rehab Inc, a rehabilitation company providing high-quality neurologic music therapy services to individuals with neurological impairment in Toronto, Ontario. Her expertise spans across the lifespan, from neurodevelopmental disorders to neurologic illness and injury, with a focus on supporting cognitive, sensorimotor, speech and language, and psychosocial needs within an interdisciplinary team. Specializing in neural rehab, she completed her clinical training with MEDRhythms at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital and the Neurologic Music Therapy Services of Arizona. She is active within the music therapy community, serving as treasurer for the Music Therapy Association of Ontario. Kaitlyn is dedicated to collaborating with community partners to advocate, educate, and treat, helping individuals find their rhythm. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bedroom Studios podcast. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first ever podcast appearance, so I'm excited.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited too because I interview a lot of artists and people that are making music. So I'm excited to hear about a different side of working in music.
Yeah, for sure. Music therapy, very different business.
Yeah.
From being a musician, like what I originally studied, but happy to be on this path.
Yeah. Can we start by having you explain what music therapy is?
Yeah. So, very general definition by the Canadian Association of Music Therapists is that, music is used in a therapeutic relationship to help mental health, overall well-being, could be psychosocial, emotional, physical goals. Really just the use of music. That's what's driving the change to help others in whatever they might need. I kind of specialize in an area of music therapy called Neurologic Music Therapy, and that definition gets a little more scientific, but that's kind of the use of the different properties of music. So thinking pitch and rhythm, melody, tempo, and how they influence our different functions, whether that be cognitive, sensorimotor, or speech and language. So that's really looking at how the different aspects of music really influence and impact the different brain areas and the functions that come with them.
That's really cool. What first sparked your interest in music therapy, and then what made you decide to go down that path to become a music therapist?
Yeah, so in my undergrad at U of T, there was a course taught by Dr. Amy. It was, I think, just health applications in music. I don't even remember what it was called now, but it was just, an introduction into how music kind of combines into the world of health. Learned about music therapy kind of primarily with individuals with dementia, Alzheimer's. And at the time, my grandmother was somewhat recently newly diagnosed. And when I would visit her, I could see that music was having an impact. And, as we really lost the ability to connect verbally and in these other ways, music was always there. She, her eyes would be open. She'd be alert. Maybe she would talk a little bit, or she'd be tapping her feet. So that connection kind of really drove me to look into music therapy. And then I found out that there was a neurologic music therapy program at U of T. And that's how I ended up there. And I think before that, I probably had no idea where I was going with my music degree or music career. So it found me at the perfect moment.
That's awesome. What sort of things do you focus on in that degree? That's kind of
Yeah.
a loaded question because
That's okay.
I'm assuming you learn a lot.
Yeah. So the degree is 2 years long, and it's a combination of, you're learning research, kind of understanding all these different techniques and how music impacts the brain, and then you have like the clinical internship side of things. If you decide to pursue music therapy. So in Canada, to be a practicing music therapist, you have to have a degree from an approved program, so whether that's a bachelor or a master's degree in music therapy. And then you complete a 1,200-hour internship.
Wow.
And then, which has to be supervised. And then you take the board certification exam. And then you sign your code of ethics with the CAMT, and then you can call yourself a music therapist and be practicing here. So yeah, there was a lot of, clinical work in the program. I had the opportunity to work with adults with dementia in like a day program type setting, and then some individuals who had post-concussion syndrome due to car accidents or other things, Parkinson's, individuals post-stroke, autism, spectrum disorder. So there's a really wide range of, clinical opportunities that we had at U of T, just doing like one-on-one sessions. I mean, it was COVID time, so some of it was on Zoom, and then some of it being in, like the client's home or offsite at a facility.
That's amazing. What sort of area do you specialize in terms of the types of people that you treat?
Yeah, so I definitely specialize in neuro rehab now. I created a business called Rhythmic Rehab. So I had a couple internship opportunities in the U.S. One of those was in a pediatric clinic working primarily with autism spectrum disorder, Down syndrome, epilepsy, things like that. And I was kind of like, ooh, like this is going to be my one love, like my one passion area for music therapy. And then I had another opportunity to complete a second internship in the U.S. At Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston with MEDRhythms. And so there I was working on the stroke, brain injury, spinal cord injury units. And it changed everything for me. I absolutely fell in love with working with those populations and the type of work that you get to do. Pretty hard to find opportunities like that in Canada and Ontario specifically. So came back, created a business, and those are, the type of clients I really enjoy working with, in the community, one-to-one in their homes.
Mm-hmm. I remember, so my only exposure to music therapy was when I was in first year in our intro to music education class. They brought in a music therapist to talk to us about what they do. And it was a lot. Like this individual specialized with palliative care, and it was like very emotionally heavy. But I also remember that she did a couple of activities with us, and it was so powerful and like connected on like an emotional level. I feel like in other ways, like in other modes of intervention, would be very difficult to reach in such a short amount of time. But at the same time, it also felt like a very safe environment, but it was also very emotional.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with music, is so motivating. It can really open people up. And obviously it can be very emotionally charged, especially depending on the music you're playing for an individual. In music therapy, it's always, always, always client preferred music, because that's what's going to get you the most engagement, the most meaning, the most change. I don't do so much emotional work like that, really focusing on, I've not ever worked in palliative care or hospice or something like that, where I can imagine just the emotion that comes through in those settings to be a lot. But, definitely like in our day-to-day, we gravitate towards music to make ourselves feel better, or like you're working out to music. It's kind of always just filling space. And, you know, if you're feeling sad, maybe you put on sad songs and cry, or maybe you want to flip your mood and you put on something happy. So yeah, in that way, it's just really beautiful how deeply music can connect us and then connect us to other people. Like, you know, you always hear the quote, or it's like when words fail, music speaks, or something like that. But like, it's true, because sometimes when you can't get out what you have to say, you can express that through music.
Mm-hmm. I want to go into more about your business that you created. You mentioned before, was it just that there weren't a lot of opportunities in your specific specialization that made you create your business, or were there other factors that led you to do that?
At the time, it was really just a lack of opportunities. Yeah, I kind of say, like, sometimes what I'm doing is a niche within a niche.
Mm.
So yeah, I just when I graduated, you know, I didn't want to move abroad. I didn't want to go to the States to pursue work where, you know, there's just so many opportunities. I'd say a lot further there than it is here. But yeah, you know, like there was no rehab hospitals where I could be doing the work that I just come back from. And even still, a lot of the music therapy businesses, you know, here, most of the time, a lot of them fall into music psychotherapy or more like music counseling, whereas I just come from studying this really different way of, you know, like I'm helping somebody learn how to walk again. So it was just, yeah, I wasn't finding opportunities that necessarily aligned with the kind of people that I wanted to work with and immerse myself in. So I didn't see myself creating a business a couple months out of grad school, but there we were. And, you know, it's been like just over a year now, and I'm really happy that I made that choice.
Yeah. Can you explain more what a typical session might look like when, you know, somebody comes in for music therapy?
Yeah. So that really, really depends on the client and kind of what their diagnosis is, what they're wanting to work on. Like, I can give you some examples of things I'm doing now. So I have one individual, he's an older adult and had a stroke a couple years ago. And he has aphasia. So now, you know, he knows what he wants to say, but he can't necessarily say it. The words aren't coming out. So for our sessions, what it looks like is singing really familiar, overlearned songs, because the words and the melody are just so ingrained in you. Like, for example, if I sang "Happy Birthday to," and I left the blank open, like your brain just knows that it's you. So it's basically that principle. And using different songs to get these target words that maybe they're unable to say anymore, or just words that they really need to be able to say to advocate for themselves, their wants, their needs. Another thing that we'll do is we'll take phrases that, you know, individuals want to say, like "I love you," "How are you," "I need help," things like that. We follow the natural inflection of what it sounds like. So we put it to melody. And basically how it works in the brain is there's this band of fibers that connects like your motor and your language regions with the auditory. So by having them tap their hand, we have, you know, the metronome going, and we're singing these phrases. Like, we'll just keep going over, like, for example, like, "How are you? How are you?" And we'll just keep rerunning that, going back and forth, and then giving them, you know, opportunities to spontaneously say it, but essentially teaching them how to say these phrases again. The work I've done with aphasia clients has been like it's incredible. Like, I remember one time I was in the hospital, and a man had just had a stroke. He was there with his family. He wasn't even really able to say his own name or much. And so I asked the wife, you know, like, what kind of music does he like? Like, what's a song that he would know really well? And they said, you know, "Here Comes the Sun," Beatles. So I was like, okay, perfect. So I start singing it, and I'm leaving in blanks for him to fill in, and the patient starts to fill them in, starts talking. You know, like, the wife and the son, like, they're just in tears because, you know, they've had this really traumatic event. It's been a couple of days since they've really heard their loved one's voice, and it's starting to come out again. obviously like there can be a really long road, and maybe they never kind of get to where they were before, but it's giving individuals strategies so that they can communicate again, which is just really beautiful that music has that capability.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. Oh my gosh, you're giving people their voices back.
Yeah, so that essentially what it is. And every time it happens, it's no more amazing than um, it was the first time, because by the time they left, they were communicating small phrases, like they were getting their confidence, and that's such a big factor in recovery. You need that motivation, you need that reward, that to have that belief in yourself that you can do it. And there's a big difference between just telling someone, hey, like, this is the phrase that you're going to say, we're doing it over and over again, whereas instead we're singing these phrases, we're incorporating their preferred music and things that they enjoy, and it really just, I feel like, changes the tone of the time that you're working together.
Do you have to learn a lot of songs as a music? Like, do you have to know the songs beforehand?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Yes. I work with the lifespan. Right now I have a baby who's like 18 months old, and then I have an adult who's 90 years old. So I work with anyone and everyone. It's like Old MacDonald and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, to the Beatles, to teen songs, to like classic rock, to oldies, que sera, like everything in between. So yes, I have learned a lot of music, and so much more to learn. But you really build up a repertoire of, being able to pull things out of your back pocket and just kind of knowing, maybe based off of their age or interests, what songs would be a good fit, at least upon your initial meeting, if you don't have the opportunity beforehand to ask them what their musical preferences are.
Mm-hmm. You'd probably be really good at karaoke.
Or there's one game show where they have to guess the song based off the lyrics or the tune. Yeah, I feel like music therapists would excel there.
Do you run your business out of a location, or do you go to your clients, like where your clients are?
I go to where my clients are. Down the line, it would be incredible to have an office space, but that's probably some ways in the future for me. So yeah, right now, if I'm at Zoom, I'm just doing it from home, or I travel to clients' houses, and I see people all over. I go to Mississauga, I'm in North York, I'm in Etobicoke, downtown, Scarborough. It really depends. It's kind of just traveling all over, at least, as a new therapist, taking whatever clients and opportunities come your way. And then, as I've started to build up a caseload and kind of make more of a name for myself, I've been able to decrease my location range, because there's a lot of driving when you do in-home sessions.
What sort of things did you do to get your name out there and to build those connections?
Yeah, I've had a busy year. So I try and be really active on social media, like Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. My first year was a lot of like graphic content, but the last couple months I've branched out into like making short videos, which actually have gone over really well and given me a lot of engagement. So that's was really nerve-wracking to kind of step into that. But I'm really proud that I took that leap. And I guess I feel like half like promoting my business / like neurologic music therapy influencer type deal. It was reaching out to a lot of community partners. So like Brain Injury Association of Niagara, because I now live permanently in Toronto, but I grew up in Niagara. So, I contacted them, Community Living, just other organizations that are, MS Canada, Parkinson's Canada, Huntington's Canada. Like, I was just contacting anyone and everyone and asking, can I come present? Can I do an in-service? Is there an opportunity for us to collaborate in programming? So I did run 2 programs in Niagara, one with Community Living Grimsby, and then a couple sessions with Brain Injury Niagara, but I moved here and I can't. That's a little too far outside my zone, but yeah, it was that. Thankfully, I have a good network of, supervisors and colleagues who've also passed along referrals. I recently published a little article in the
Ooh.
Ontario Brain Injury Review. So it was a lot of preparing presentations and in services. A lot of like making fact sheets and collecting research and making proposals to send to people. A lot of unpaid work. Bottom line is, like none of those things are, I'm not, if I spend X amount of time making a presentation or proposal, you're not getting paid for that. But down the line, I started to reap the rewards of all the work I've been doing.
That's so great. Like I've seen some of your social media videos, and it's just like really amazing to see how it's been growing from when like I first saw that you started this to now. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's come a long way, and I think the big thing I've learned is like people need to see it.
Yeah.
When I told people I was studying music therapy in small town Grimsby, Niagara, nobody had a clue, what I was doing my degree in. And even here, like when I meet clients for the first time, they're like, we have absolutely no idea what to expect. Like, what even is this? So I've found that, when I can take videos of myself doing it, or now I have some clients who, I can share our journey together. When you see what's happening and you understand why we're doing it, you're like, oh, wow, this is actually really incredible. And like, it really works.
Yeah. For my teaching, I'm specializing in intermediate senior grades, but I also work a lot with really young children, and I'm constantly singing with them. Like even when I'm it's not even an activity. Sometimes when they're just going crazy and I'm trying to get the group together, I'll just be like, okay, it's time to come sit down in the circle. And for some reason, like when I add melody to my voice, it just engages them just a little bit more.
Yeah, that novelty, it grabs their attention, and like that whole music and using all those sensory inputs just for like that self-regulation, especially at that age. I'm part of working with a really awesome organization called Music for Every Child, and they provide music therapy services to. It started downtown Toronto, but like now I see they've got it in North Bay, Hamilton, it's really expanding, but they provide group music therapy sessions. So now I'm actually a part of 3 schools, and it's my second year doing it. And so, I've got the kinders and then like grade 7 and 8 and everything in between, but it's been really incredible just to see the impact that the programming has had on them. And then, going back a year later and seeing all the progress they've made over the summer, and just, they can stop and go. They're following instructions. They can regulate their bodies. Because most of the children I'm working with, they have autism spectrum or another, neurodevelopmental disorder that just can make things tricky and kind of needing that like specialized education, whereas sometimes in the general classroom it's a lot more difficult to provide what they need.
And a lot of like in a classroom setting, not a lot of teachers have a music background. Very few probably have a music background. I don't know how applicable this is to, I guess, the zone that you're operating in. Kind of the target audience of this podcast is people pursuing music careers. Is there anything in your practice or something that you've learned that musicians can take and use either in their like musical practice or in other areas of their life? My thinking is like music therapy is very helpful for people who don't even engage in music at all in their day, or like as a musician.
I get what you're saying. Okay. So I will say, when I was at U of T in my undergrad, I experienced so much performance anxiety, absolutely crippling performance anxiety. And that eventually also led me to music therapy, because I was looking into, other therapies to help with my own anxiety so that I could actually perform and play. And, what I found was that playing for other people, but, the goal isn't necessarily a performance-based goal. It's not how amazing I can play this piece, or there can't be absolutely any errors. Like, the goal here is human connection. My client doesn't, obviously I want to play as well as I can, but if I make a little mistake here or there, that's, we're working on making them walk again or talk again, or like emotional support, or we're, teaching a child how to do something for the first time. So the focus really comes away from yourself, and the focus is on the client, the individual in front of you. And that shift away from me and, using music, something I love, to help somebody else, really healed my relationship with music in general. After I left U of T, I did not play, or for my undergrad, I did not play the flute, and I still don't play the flute on a regular basis at all. Like, I had a very strange relationship with performance. So for me personally, like, music therapy was really a journey of like finding my enjoyment and love for music again, and how I could use it to help other people. And I know, like, that's kind of been a common theme for other music therapists as well. And even just musicians, seeking out other forms of therapy to, so that they can continue their music career and, be thriving with whatever might be going on in their life.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I feel like recently, because I started taking voice lessons after I graduated, and I'm at a point now where, like, I feel like when I sing, I'm so like hyper aware of the things that need work, and it's hard to find a good balance of like what you were saying, taking the focus off of myself and putting it somewhere else. Yeah that was a big thing for me. I know for others, when you're in that therapeutic relationship, like when you're practicing music therapy, like the focus should not be on yourself, because it's what you're doing for the client and how you're helping them. And that mindset shift, I feel like, now when I've done an odd performance here or there, or even just like having the confidence to like post videos online where I'm playing things, is not something I would have had 3 years ago, 2 years ago even. Yeah, it's interesting, like, even as an artist, you can kind of frame it that same way of like, if you're playing a gig and you're performing for people, that can, like, emotionally, that can sometimes be a therapeutic relationship, like depending on the songs you're doing. Or even like if you're playing upbeat songs and like everyone's dancing, that could be like the best part of someone's day.
Yeah, you're providing that like when you're performing, you're providing that entertainment. There's, an aspect of connection there, and kind of like same principle, like you're taught, if you make a mistake, like don't stop, don't make it obvious. And it's like same thing when you're performing for, aesthetic reasons. But then when it comes to therapy, it's like, if you stop and do something, then you're kind of like messing with the intervention and the flow of it. And it might make it more difficult for the client to kind of follow with what you're doing. So that was another big thing of me, because I was like the queen of, if like in practicum, if I was doing something, or like I'd get really nervous and I like might try and repeat something or stop, and it was like, no, like you just got to play through it, because the client doesn't care if you accidentally played one wrong note. Like, you need to keep going with whatever you're doing, like whatever the goal of your exercise is. So yeah, it taught me to care a lot, but care about different things. And yeah, I guess would be my advice, to musicians, or like someone pursuing a career in music therapy, because it is growing in Canada, and that's in Ontario, and that's really exciting.
Was there a client experience you've had that was especially impactful, that comes to mind?
Yeah, there are so many, and that's kind of the beauty of music therapy, is so many of these interactions are so impactful. I'm thinking of, I guess, like, in addition to the, the story of the man I talked about with aphasia, but when I was in my internship at Spaulding Rehab, there was a woman who had a spinal cord injury. And the exciting thing was we got to work from her basically from when she got there until she left. And we're doing gait treatment, we're doing gait training in co-treatment with the physical therapist there. So, the physical therapists are providing that physical support, helping her walk, instructing her how to move. And I'm there playing the guitar and giving her this rhythmic input, because it's sending this information to her spinal cord, like, you know, to move and to get going. And we saw the progression of, you know, when she started, she was in, it's called like a vector, and essentially it's like a harness, and it will take the body weight off of her, so she just has to be able to move her legs but not support the full weight of herself, to a walker, to crutches, to walking with no device. And this was over the course of maybe, you know, like 6 weeks. And the moment that she walked, she's receiving so much therapy, you know, like she was getting co-treatment with us like 2 times a week, and then physical therapy every day. Like, it's a very intense rehab regimen. But that moment that she walked with no device, like, even she just broke down, and we all just like were like stunned for a minute, because, you know, like seeing where she was a couple weeks ago and now she's here, like being part of that journey, just that changed everything for me. And I was just like, this is, you know, what I want to spend my life doing. So yeah, and there's so many stories that are like that.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, I know this is a podcast, but I feel like it's such a different thing to see it than to, you know, like I can tell you, but then also when you see it, you're just like stunned.
Yeah, it's like there are some movies where, like, you know, like based on a true story, super inspirational, and the person learns how to walk again after the accident. And like those movies, they're like, it gets like, I like those movies, like it really gets me, but at the same time it's a movie, and there's like an element of like, oh, this is like kind of dramatized for, you know, for film. But then like to know that those things happen in real life, 6 weeks is not a long time.
Oh, and like, yeah, it was living one of those movies, and, you know, you're like, oh, it's magic, but like it's not magic. Like, it's neurologic music therapy, it's music therapy. Like, there's reasons why these things happen, and just more people need to be aware that it's a treatment option and that it's available to them. Yeah, now I'm just very, very passionate advocate. I feel like I don't stop talking about work and what I do, but, you know, I just love it and want as many people as possible to be able to experience it if they need it.
What would you say to someone who doesn't really know what it is, but is also kind of like skeptical of music therapy?
Yeah, my go-to kind of examples are generally, you know, like, I am using music to help someone who's experienced a stroke. You know, like, they have difficulty speaking, but when we sing songs that are familiar, it kind of triggers their speech again. Or I'll give the example of the walking, because those are 2 like very concrete examples where, you know, like, if you go and search it up on YouTube, like, you will find videos of and be able to see it. And when you see it, there's no real arguing with that. It's in front of your face, and it's working. So yeah, those are probably the 2. Because if you can, you know, like, relate it to like speech language pathology or physical therapy, like, we are doing what these other disciplines do. We're just approaching it from a music lens. Yeah. Like, when I write a goal or objective for music therapy, like, the goal isn't that they're gonna do XYZ with music. Like, the goal is that, like, they're gonna walk again at this cadence or this tempo, or they're gonna say like these words or phrases. It's just the music is what we're doing to get there. So we'll always say, like, music is driving the change. We do what these other therapies are doing. It's just our method is music.
I feel like recently I've been becoming a lot more open to trying different ways of like healing and thinking about things, or like, for me, it's more of like a mental health perspective. It's not even that I wasn't open to those things in the past, but it's just, I think, like, along your journey, you try different things. And I know this isn't your specialty, but I found that, like, lying down on my floor and on the carpet and putting my Galaxy projector on the ceiling and listening to calming music, and then like very intentionally like taking really calm breaths, that's been so wonderful for my mental health. And I feel like when I don't have the soft music playing, it's a very different experience. It's not a necessarily worse experience, but like, I do find that it's harder to turn my brain off and just breathe when I don't have the music going. And so yeah, it's like, I think as a musician, I take it for granted because I'm like, yeah, like, no, duh, music is helpful in all these situations.
Yeah, no, I love that you're doing that. I've definitely created a lot of home programs for people with like a music assisted relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation
Mm.
to movement. Like, there's some guided breathing, mantra writing, like just giving them like cues when to squeeze and release, and making like, if we're squeezing, the music's going to be really crunchy, and then, like that resolution. Yeah, mantra writing and songwriting has also
Mm.
been really powerful. I know you are
Yeah.
like you write your songs completely from scratch, and you're doing all the things, but a big songwriting strategy in music therapy is just like a lyric substitution, taking a song
Mm.
and like ad lib or mad libs.
That's really cool.
I love doing it. I love doing it with kids, older adults,
Yeah.
everyone. But today I did a virtual group with Keep Your Head Up Foundations. They're a charity that provides supports to individuals who've experienced brain injury or
Mm.
concussion. So they do a mindful moments group, and I've been doing it for a couple months, and the group's really taken to songwriting. So based off the different themes that people have shown interest in, I'll bring a song, we'll listen to it, have a discussion, and then we'll just change up the words, and then, I'll sing it back, give them the lyrics, the recording, and then they have like this great product that they get to take from our time together. But I've done like Billie Eilish, like What Was I Made For, or Fleetwood
Yeah.
Mac Landslide, or even today I did Best Day of My Life, American authors, and made it like
Yeah.
blank year of my life, so that we could talk a bit about like 2025 and things that you want to take with you into the year. And songwriting has been so powerful. I've found that even when I've had a difficult day and I'm doing an exercise like this with someone, like when you get to take a song and make it your own and play it, it just becomes this really powerful, like healing experience.
Yeah.
So I feel like I even, not that you can, but I'm like music therapying myself sometimes.
I'm always in the back of my mind trying to look for and think of ways to make songwriting more accessible to people, because I think that it's so hard to start, because we listen to, just in general, most people listen to songs all the time, and so they have a really
Mm-hmm.
clear idea of what a song is, and then when you try it for the first time, it can get frustrating if it doesn't, what you make doesn't match up to the idea of what you have in your head.
Yep.
So that strategy of like using something already existing as a template is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Or either like replacing the words and keeping the melody, or I've done it where somebody really likes the words, but they don't like the style of the song.
Mm,
So maybe it was, I don't remember what style it was in, but they wanted like a country twang, so I changed the key, changed
that's
the
fun.
pattern, or so yeah. The whole like improv aspect of that is great. And sorry, going back to like what you said about things that musicians can take away from this, I feel like this maybe doesn't apply to everyone depending on your background, but at least I found being very classically trained, like improv was not something
Mm,
that we were doing, and it was absolutely terrifying to me. And now, if I want to go on guitar, piano, flute, and improv something like with a client and help them work through something, I feel like I can do that. It's really just opened me up to be a lot more free
yeah.
with my playing. Whereas like when you're a musician, sometimes you're playing your sheet music, it can be very difficult to get out of the sheet music.
Yeah, it's hard to let go. Can you talk more about connecting music with movement and with body connection? And like, I asked this in general because I'm curious, but
Mm-hmm.
also I've been on a journey trying to connect more with my body, and like learning how to have trust between like my mind and my body and vice versa. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but you can like answer it in your, however it comes up in your practice. It doesn't have to be related to that.
Yeah. I do, like I said, I do a lot of work with children, a lot of sensory regulation, especially kiddos with autism.
Mm.
There's these open, short connections, these long connections. It can be so difficult to feel where they are in space and kind of get the sensory input that they need. Um, so I've done a lot of rhythmic squeezes. And it's basically what it sounds like. You're just providing like deep pressure input, starting from the toes all the way up to the head and then through the arms, at a specific tempo, metronome tempo, just kind of based off of your observations of how they move, like where their natural cadence is sitting. And that's been like a really powerful tool for helping kids regulate, getting to sleep, calming down, being more in their body. And along with that, we also do something called bilateral drumming, which is what you think it is. Like you'll have like two drums, and they'll be crossing the midline, opposite arm to opposite drum, again at that same like preferred internal tempo. And I found, like, as the person who was delivering the drums and doing it, having that movement, like where I am crossing it and getting both hemispheres of my brain activated, sometimes it feels like a real brain workout and kind of like rocks your world. But other times it's just so grounding and so nice. And so now, like, I tell people, like sometimes when I'm like listening to music or like walking down the street, like I'll purposely just like cross my body in time with the beat, because I just feel like it helps regulate and helps ground me, at least, like, more in that sense of like connecting the mind and the body.
That's really cool. What does it do when you cross your hands?
Well, because so if your like left hemisphere of your brain is activated, it's controlling like your right arm, your right leg, and vice versa. So like when you're crossing that midline, both the hemispheres of your brain are connecting, and you're getting both of them engaged, and they're sending signals to each other. And then also, like, if you have the rhythms providing that input, if you're touching something, that tactile, that deep pressure, if you're giving yourself those squeezes, like, music is just a really big sensory experience. And it can, you're watching a horror film or something, it can make you stressed and anxious, but like you said, like, when you're on your yoga mat and listening to something calming, you can also really use it to regulate your body and just be in a better space.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered situations where a certain type of music was triggering to a client, or like it had a negative reaction instead of a positive?
Yeah. It definitely can happen. And that's, people are like, how can music therapy cause any harm? Like, this is one of those instances where you really have to know about the person you're working with and what could potentially be triggering. I haven't had any real big reactions to a song that I've played, like, at least because of the song choice or the music that I picked. But I do a lot of work with people with brain injuries and or like post-concussion, and you can get really, really sensitive to music and sound. So, another thing is, depending on who you're working with, like knowing how to manipulate the music and give them the musical information they need, but not overwhelming them or like triggering like overstimulation, things like that. So, or like, like working in long-term care with individuals with dementia, if they're kind of asleep or at a certain level of arousal and you come in there guns blazing, it's not how you want to do it. We always say in music therapy, like, you want to meet people where they're at. And then if we're going to kind of change their arousal state or their mood state, you do that gradually through like the ISO principle. You want to take them from where they are to their desired state, but like, you've got to do it through progression. Otherwise it's kind of a shock to the system or the mind. So yeah, those are just some of the ways you really got to be mindful when you're working with music, because it can bring a lot of pleasure to people, but it can also harm people if you don't know how to use it correctly.
Yeah, it's like with any medical profession.
Yeah, there's ethics involved. You need to know what you're doing.
Yeah. So I have 2 questions that I ask everybody.
Okay.
The first one is, what resource or piece of advice would you give your younger self when you were beginning your journey?
Is this my music therapy journey or like my whole music journey?
You can pick whatever comes up to you that you'd like to share.
Yeah, wow. I feel like this is going to go back to what I said, but it's it's not all about you all of the time. And I feel like if I had just been able to drill that in myself, I could have saved myself a lot of anxiety and stress. You want to do your best, but like, perfection isn't everything. I definitely am a perfectionist personality.
Me too.
So yeah, to the point of that type A flute player personality that everyone talks about. So yeah, like I didn't need to be so hard on myself. I didn't need to put so much pressure on myself. And looking back, if I could have done anything differently, it would have just been like I tell my clients now, give yourself grace. And I was not giving myself grace back then. So wherever you are in your musical career, give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely hard when you're like in like an environment where everybody is working towards being able to do something at such a high level. It's like even if like your goal is to do something else, like my goal was to be a teacher, but I got into university and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be a really good flute player.
Yeah.
It's like so much pressure. And I'm glad I practiced a lot, but I could have done without all of the stress that I put myself through.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm happy of what I accomplished and, I'm proud of the skills I gained, but girl, you just needed to chill out a bit. Like, because I didn't even know what I was going to do with my music degree. I just knew I loved music and I always said I wanted to help people. And so maybe that was part of it. But yeah, finding music therapy and changing that shift came at the perfect moment for me.
Yeah. I find like people, you tend to know when you've found the thing that's right for you. Like you just know.
And I feel like for a long time at U of T, I was really pushing like, I have to be a performance major or like I have to go into a career of performance. And I was like, I don't even like this. Like, I don't think this is me. And I also didn't like teaching. Like I know a lot of music therapists like will teach adaptive lessons or, they also want to be like teach music. And I just, it's not for me. God bless teachers everywhere, but like teaching is not my calling either.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, so it was just, I know that I've found my path and I'm stuck here and I'm good and I'm happy.
Mm-hmm. And the last question is, what is your music recommendation for our audience?
My music recommendation is Inertia by AJR. I'm so sad. I had tickets to see them and I got sick. And they were like my one band that I really wanted to hear live. But I don't know. I got into running this year, like running long distances, and that album got me through my training, and it was just a good vibe. It was a good time. So that's my recommendation.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Bedroom Studios podcast. Don't forget to add this podcast to your playlists and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify at Bedroom Studios Podcast. You can follow Kaitlyn on social media and check out Rhythmic Rehab. All links can be found in the episode description. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.